There's a great many ways for an operator to interact with the tools in Metrix to create a fantastic layout or project. But there is another side to Metrix. It's called Automation Lite, and it's the ability to partially or completely automate the power of Metrix. Now, when thinking of automation, I separate customers into two groups. First, there's the customers with an MIS or a web portal or a database of some kind that has the ability to send Metrix data in the form of XML, Metrix XML data, or comma separated, also known as CSV data. Then there's the other group of customers, those that don't have these kind of systems, but nevertheless they want to automate some of their work. I'm actually going to start out with the second group, first of all, customers that don't have a system that can send data to Metrix. Now, one comment before I jump in. As I'm recording this, I'm making the assumption that those who are interested in automating Metrix already have a good understanding of how Metrix works in an operator-driven fashion. Let me go here and go to Metrix. And I'm going to open up a project that I've just started. And just for the sake of time, I've already created the start of this project. It's a pretty simple one. It's just a couple of different postcards that need to be produced. So the operator would have gone through the product wizard, something like that, to create these two products. Now at this point, and in this project's example, I don't know that I would necessarily hit autoplan. It's pretty straightforward that these should be on the same sheet. But that's not necessarily true. In fact, using autoplan is quite often our first step. Take whatever's in the project list, decide if it should be put on one, two, or multiple sheets. So autoplan could be a 30-second procedure. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, could be 30 minutes, depending on the complexity of the work. After that, multiple layouts could be existing, and I would probably run through auto production on one or more of those layouts, trying to tighten them up even further. I would then probably run auto layout on each of those layouts, again trying to find a better solution. At that point, I would need to check, make sure that there's no errors on the project or the components, make sure everything's good. At some point, I would need to add marks to it. I might look for standards, if standards are available. And ultimately, I would need to save it into the Metrix database, and then ultimately, finally, export the project out to prepress and maybe XML data on and finishing data and so forth. Now, that whole project from A to Z can be anywhere from 1 minute to 30 minutes, and it could be even longer if it's a very complex project. The alternative to doing all of that work, which is what people are used to in Metrix, is automation. To set that up, I'm first of all going to minimize this, and I would then launch a copy of Metrix, or have a copy launched, on another machine, probably on my Metrix server. I'm going to log in here, and I'm going to convert this copy to run in automation mode. This is going to use up one of my Metrix licenses, and it'll sit here running as a hot folder, waiting for projects to come from somewhere for automated processing. So essentially, I'm going to take the project here from my desktop on Mac or Windows and send it over through automation to this hot folder. Now the question should be, well, what's going to happen to it? And that's what you get to determine when you set up what we call commands files. Think of them like a script of what should occur. I'm going to browse out here and find one. Let's grab this one here. It's an XML file. You can edit it in a text editor, and it describes what should occur when projects come here. First of all, actually I won't go through every one of these, but things like making sure that all the product PDF files can be found if they've been assigned, changing and making sure the bleeds are all uniform, doing the auto plan that I mentioned before, then auto production, then auto layout, looking for standards, adding marks. You get the idea here. You determine the sequence and the option for these sequenced items to determine what's going to happen when projects arrive here. When it's finally finished all of this processing, which could be very quick and could take an awful long time, it's going to save it into the database, and then if the conditions above have been met okay, no errors have been caused, it's going to automatically do exports like a fully imposed PDF or a JDF imposition. Regardless, when it's completely finished, you're going to either get an email saying the project is complete and it's waiting, we've exported it, it's all great, or I've done all this work on it, the project is saved in the database, but there's some reason that you need to pay attention to it. Something has occurred and we didn't export it, so you need to go fix it or at least find out what happened. So you may have several of these that you create, and you may even run multiple instances of Automation Lite if you have very different ways you'd like work processed through Metrix. I just go ahead and start this, and I'm just going to minimize it. Well, actually, I'll leave it here for now. I'm just going to go back to my copy of Metrix here. So here's a project. It's admittedly very simple, but you know what? I'm just going to really be normally clicking through these things and accepting defaults. So if that's the case, instead, why don't I just hit the Automate button? It shows me any copies of Automation Lite that are running and which commands file is loaded. So I can pick from among them. I've only got one here. I'm going to save it, close it, and get rid of it. And it's gone. I'm on to other work, working on the next project or doing something else. On that other machine in the back room, Metrix is sequentially going step by step through all the processes defined in the commands file. So right now, oh, it was doing autoplan, it's done autoplan, auto production, auto layout, and again, you see the sequence on the left, it's just following it on the right. In other words, all my work goes through in a very consistent, very quick fashion. And it's finished. Now, what did it do? Well, let's minimize both of these. I've got a folder here where Metrix has not only exported JDFs and PDFs, etc., but in this case, just diagrams. And I can open one of these up. It's just a PNG diagram of the results. It's been planned on a 2840 sheet. It's got marks. It's a great layout. I don't have to question whether there was something that broke rules or something because it couldn't have exported it unless it's an actual good layout. Let's go back to Metrix. And if I wanted, I won't do it now, but I could even open up that project and further edit it if I didn't like the results it came up with. So that's one side of it. I have a project, I just want to push it over and have it automated for me. Now the other side of it is that second group of customers that I mentioned, people who have data that comes from some other system. In this case, I've got some XML files, CSV file, and I simply want to automate those. Now, you'd have to know ahead of time, I suppose. You'd have to do some thinking here. Not all of your work is probably a candidate for Automation Lite. Some of it you want to send to Metrix and have an operator look at it and play with it and work on it. And some of your work you really don't need that. Maybe the simpler work that's going to a digital press. I don't need people to play with that. I just want to automate it. And sometimes also our most complex work, that gang work. I don't want an operator's machine tied up for 15 minutes doing a very complex autoplan. I'd much prefer to offload this to a machine in the back room and only have to deal with it once all the work has been done, and I can now examine it and see if there's work for me to do or whether the results are good enough. So these examples here are pretty good ones. Let me just take a single postcard and I just drag it into an input folder. This is being watched by Automation Lite somewhere on the network. Of course, all this is happening on my local machine. And Automation Lite, if I bring it up here, you can see is automatically working on that project. Let's put that away and also grab a bunch of flyers. I think there's 11 flyers here. Actually, no, let's grab the pizza flyers. It's a CSV example. There's a good one. And I'll even grab a book as well. So all product types are supported. And as automation gets them and finishes one project, it's right on to the next project, one after the next after the next. And you can see it's done the single postcard. The diagram is over here as evidence that it made it through. And it's working on the next project. I think the next one was the 11 flyers. No, looks like it got to the book first. So I can see these book signatures. And I could flip through those and have a look at them. Looks like these ones picked up standards. It's an amazingly simple system. It's very efficient. And it brings an incredible boost in productivity to those who can identify some portion of their work that can be automated. Clearly, there are customers whose work is very complex and it needs an operator to look at everything. Now, there's more that could be said. There's other aspects to this that I haven't covered. If you look in the Metrix user guide, there's an embedded movie in there that goes into this in much more detail. But this is good information to help us understand the concepts behind Automation Lite.